Hi there, I'm Lucas McCann, and today my presentation is going to be called What's in Your Cup? It is the sales and science of the cannabis beverages in Canada. A little bit about me and the company I work for. I'm with CannDelta. We're a leading regulatory and scientific cannabis consulting company. A lot of our employees are formerly with Health Canada, and we assist folks with the licensing process as well as post-regulatory support. So if after the presentation you have any interest in starting a business in the beverage industry, feel free to send us a note. We'd love to chat with you. Let's talk a little bit about the common delivery routes of cannabis. So cannabis has many popular routes of delivery. The most popular one by far is the pulmonary route. So anywhere from smoking or vaping has always been number one with consumers. Following that are the edible products, which fall into the oral categories. That includes edibles, capsules, and more recently beverages as well. Transdermal would include your creams, ointments, and patches, right? Your topical products. And transmucosal, sublingual, intranasal, as well as ocular and rectal methods of delivery exist for cannabis products as well. But we're going to be focused on the beverage part for today. So what is a cannabis beverage? Health Canada defines a beverage that contains cannabis or THC as an edible product. So the words are kind of interchangeable. A beverage is an edible, and edible is not necessarily a beverage. These edible products, they're all limited to 10 milligrams of THC per product. There's no limit on the amount of CBD that can be contained within a product, and it cannot be mixed with alcohol. Or have the name of a type of alcohol as well to avoid any kind of confusion. So you can't have a beer that becomes infused with THC if it hasn't been de-alcoholized. In fact, even calling something a can of beer is against the regs as well. A can of beer is not something you can have or you can sell. But you can have and sell a cannabis-infused malt beverage, although it sounds a little bit less appetizing. CBD wine or CBD champagne would have to be referred to as CBD grape juice or CBD fermented beverage. Again, a little bit less appetizing, but avoids that link between cannabis and alcohol. What we've seen here in this report that was just recently released from Headset, in this Cannabis Beverages report, is that cannabis beverages have been increasing steadily in popularity since the legalization, stabilizing at around 4% of the average basket size. So that means that of 100 people, typically about 4 of those people would have beverages in their shopping cart with their purchases. And we see that those numbers are greatly reflected as well in Toronto. Here we have some data from the Ontario Cannabis Store in their quarterly report showing that beverages hover around 4% of the total product sales, and that dried flower has been the leader for some time and probably will remain to be the leader for some time. So what's all the fuss about beverages about? So cannabis-infused beverages, what are they? What are they made out of? Largely, what you're going to have in a cannabis beverage is mostly water. Mostly water packed with a large amount of nitrogen to help to prevent any kind of oxidation from the components. So like the carrier oil oxidation is a huge concern. So packing and pressurizing these bottles with nitrogen really helps to act as a natural preservative. And then the rest, a very, very small amount, are going to be certain oils there. You'll have emulsifiers as well as your cannabis oil. So your cannabis oil will include a carrier oil and either a distillate or an isolate in most cases, as well as surfactants. And surfactants are the guys that we'll talk about a little bit in a little bit of time here that help stabilize and homogenize these solutions during the emulsion process. The process from start to finish is pretty complicated. There are 2 tandem routes that will occur. You prepare the water portion, which is usually municipally sourced water. It's got to be tested regularly. It's got to be clean, and a lot of folks are using reverse osmosis to ensure a very high quality product. And then you need to extract distillate or isolate from the biomass, and in some cases just a regular sort of crude extraction can be used as well. So preparing the cannabis oil represents that tandem process, which is largely the focus of our presentation, and the key steps there and how that's done before the oil and the water are mixed together are going to be key for understanding how droplet formation occurs at those stages and how the product is going to taste and how it's going to work with you as well. There are a lot of scientific challenges of putting beverages together. It's not easy, and a lot of great minds have come to the table to try and figure out what the best way is to do this. The challenges include is that once you get the oil and water to finally mix, you have big risks of these compounds crashing out. And crashing outs can occur, for example, if you have a bunch of pallets on the back of a truck that drives through the cold prairies to deliver products to the West Coast, or maybe cars that are carrying some bottles on the dashboard and get parked outside in the warm sun for a while. These temperature changes can actually cause an oil-water separation in these products and will greatly change not only the taste, but also the effects of these products as well. Oxidation of the carrier oil is another one, which is why we pack them under nitrogen. Adhesion was a very, very popular problem that Canopy was experiencing with the can liners on their aluminum cans, as it was absorbing THC and underdosing folks as well, which is a huge concern. If you're not getting the full 10 milligrams, even losing a milligram, that's that in itself is it's not great for business, right? It's not great to be losing the small amount of THC that you are permitted to have into the liner of a can. And again, another challenge is that there are a lot of great labs that are very familiar with the science of emulsions and food science, but if they're not licensed, they can't really help any of the cannabis expert folks out, because non-cannabis licensed labs can't carry cannabis. And again, these products have to be stable in room temperature, but most people like to enjoy a cold beverage, right? So typically these beverages are going into the fridge, either at the retail store or when folks are bringing them home from the retail store as well, before they consume them. In addition to that, you also have concerns surrounding pH, so acids and bases, salts, sugars, juices, and juices again will have questions around pH as well, cannabinoids and flavoring agents. So at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what does this taste like? How does it taste? And how does it make me feel? Because of the regulations, we have uniform distribution is a requirement for cannabis beverages. So that means that the cannabinoids and terpenes that exist in a topical or an extract or any of these products, edible products, has to be uniform from drop to drop. So it's regulated to be good to the last drop effectively. And again, there are a lot of challenges surrounding kinetic stability as it pertains to temperature. So coalescence can occur. That's these really small droplets of oil that we've got dispersed now in this water solution, starting to clump together. That can also lead to like a flocculation, where droplets are not sticking, but they're combining. And then there's also coalescence and creaming, which are basically all different ways of saying that you're getting an oil-water separation. The cannabinoids that exist in cannabis all have very lipophilic properties. And what lipophilic means is that they typically like to hang around oil a lot more than like to hang around water. So if we mix distillate and water, we'll get that classic olive oil water scenario or oil and vinegar scenario where we'll see separation. So we need something to come in between to help coax this relationship, to make those two feel more comfortable to mix and to homogenize, which creates a better taste, better flavor, better experience for the consumer. Exogenous cannabinoids like THC here, they've got very, very small polar functional groups, which means there's small little parts on them that are water loving, which is very important for how they fit into the active site in the CB1 receptor. They're a partial potent agonist of the CB1 receptor. But mostly they have this very long, greasy lipophilic tail, and CBD is no exception as well. CBD is very, very similar in structure to THC. And the challenge of working with THC as well is that after a month of storage at 40 degrees, 75% of that product is going to be degraded into something else, likely CBN, which again is going to change user experience. So without some kind of natural preservatives in these things, it's very, very challenging to deliver a product from the processor to the consumer. Carrier oils are very important to consider here. So what a carrier oil is the envelope around the cannabis, or the cannabis oil. And what's important about them is we need to select a carrier oil that's not going to adversely affect the product. So it can't change the appearance, the taste, the texture, or more important, the stability. So choosing the wrong carrier oil will lead to, again, an oil-water separation here as well. And typically what we see in cannabis products is a large affinity, no pun intended, for MCT oil, and there's very good reason for that. So MCT oil is very, very common in the cannabis industry because it's a food-grade product. It's already been used in other food products. It's relatively inexpensive, but this journal article here from the Comprehensive Reviews in Food Science and Food Safety, this article from 2016, indicates that MCT oil is very, very good at forming very, very small droplet sizes relative to other oils. Now that's significant. Now, something that even adds to the complexity of cannabis beverages is the language that we've been using. So when we talk about this and when the word emulsion comes up, microemulsion, well, let's break that down. The word micro means something that is 10 to the minus 6 in size. So a micron would be 10 to the minus 6 meters. Nano, very similar, 10 to the minus 9. So on the number side, something that is at nanoscale is going to be much smaller than something that's at the micro scale. Okay, but a nanoemulsion droplet, because of how the science had been coming out in the 60s, and the articles have been published where they weren't doing proper droplet size analysis, the term nanoemulsion actually means a larger droplet. So if you're having a conversation with someone about emulsions, it's very important to bring in the concept of droplet size. So all to say that how we actually define a nanoemulsion is not to do with the math, it's to do with how these things were discovered, and that the nanoemulsions, by definition, are thermodynamically more unstable. Whereas the microemulsions, the smaller droplet sizes, which is counterintuitive to what we normally would say, are actually more thermodynamically stable. So we have to define these in terms of stability and droplet size. Very important when having conversations around the table to understand that the nano, despite the name, actually means a larger droplet size. Emulsion and the importance of surfactants. So like we were saying again, we're taking two things that don't like to hang out together and mixing them together. And many foods already exist like that in the food industry. So milk, cream, soups, salad dressings, sauces, desserts, mayonnaise, butter, even margarine. All of these are homogenized compounds of things that wouldn't normally naturally mix together. You know, food separation or oil separation is common with this product. It's something we even see on jars of peanut butter. So what we do in the food industry is we use a number of surfactants to mix into the products so that we can coax these things to mix together. And those can include things like polysorbate, tween, and span. These are just names for some of these compounds that we use. And what they do is they help control these emulsions, these mixtures, by lowering that kinetic stability, right? But the challenge with using these products is they change the taste of them. They're often very much a soapy or a bitter tasting compound, and creating a flavor there that could be sensitive to something like that, such as like mixing with certain kinds of juices that are a little bit acidic, you know, it could really offset the taste of things, and having too much surfactant in there is going to create a product that people don't necessarily recognize the taste of and won't really like. So colloidal delivery systems is what we're talking about when we're talking about breaking up these oils into very, very small droplets. And it's something that's actually very common in food and pharma as a delivery system. So remember, emulsions are a very complicated conversation as they're counterintuitive. So let's really go back to using the term droplet size to define effectiveness in these products. And when we decrease the droplet size, right, we go smaller, right, so from 150 nanometers to 100 to 50 to even a 10 nanometer size droplet, we're increasing bioavailability. And again, the droplets that we're talking about have a carrier oil around them with small amount of the cannabis oil, the distillate or the isolate contained within them. Okay, so these small particle sizes have numerous benefits. They have improved stability to particle aggregation. So the smaller these things are, the more stable we can get them. They resist gravitational separation. They can produce optically clear products. And what that means is that they have a low refractivity. So when we're mixing these oils and these waters together, they actually look like they're clear and translucent and even transparent in some cases, the smaller the droplet is. And that's, I think, really important for creating a quality product. Because if you're taking something that is an infused, let's say again, malt beverage as an example, oftentimes we think of a cloudy beer as a result of a poor quality product. So we're used to seeing things that are transparent. Again, that's a huge challenge unless we have the right particle size. They actually help to increase the bioavailability of these bioactive compounds, right, that are encapsulated within them. So what that means is instead of them going into the stomach and being digested into the liver, they're basically going right into the bloodstream the moment they start hitting your tongue, your esophagus, and your stomach. Okay, so these products will have a much faster onset time when we have a smaller droplet size. And in fact, The smaller the droplet sizes, around that 10 sort of nanometer mark, is sort of the magic sweet spot where we have a very fast onset. The onset for beverages that contain these microemulsion or small nano droplet size droplets will typically take effect within minutes of consuming a beverage that has them. And even in certain research labs where they've been doing palatability tests and studies, they found that even without swallowing these compounds, just simply taking a shot, swirling them around the mouth to record the flavor, and then spitting that compound out, that beverage out, that the registrants in this study were actually starting to feel the effects after a few tastes. Again, it's very, very quick onset. It's not like, for example, consuming a chocolate bar, right? Because there the particle sizes are much larger and less bioavailable. But not only that, but the concentrations that are needed to sort of get people to feel like they're feeling impaired is a lot less. And in some cases, even as little as 7 milligrams can have huge impairing effects, especially on non-cannabis users. So droplet size, very, very important. So just to conclude, to wrap this all up, we want to say that the Science of Beverages is a very, very interesting scientific marvel, I would say. And it has a much better user experience for the consumer because it's much more controlled. They can understand what they're going to get at the beginning of consuming a product, and they're not sitting around for hours burning the OCS because the product hasn't worked, only to find out that they've consumed too much later on, and they're really in it for a long trip. And again, the popularity of beverages is only sure to increase as we bring in consumption lounges in Ontario and across Canada. And if you're ever in a conversation again about emulsions, be clear on particle size, because scientific literature has shown us that nano means bigger than micro, and that's not intuitive. And you know, let's call on the scientists maybe to go back and correct that. So thanks very much for your time. I'm Lucas McCann, signing off. Have a great day.